In the gleaming boardrooms of Beijing and the engineering halls of Stuttgart, one of the most audacious cases of corporate theft was unfolding between supposed partners. BAIC Motor Corporation, China's state-owned automotive giant, had spent years building what appeared to be a model joint venture with Mercedes-Benz parent company, Daimler AG. But behind the handshakes and ceremonial signings, BAIC was systematically stealing the crown jewels of German automotive engineering, violating technology transfer agreements with a brazenness that would ultimately cost both companies billions and reshape how Western automakers approach the Chinese market. This wasn't industrial espionage conducted in shadows by rogue agents. This was systematic theft orchestrated at the highest levels of a state-owned enterprise, sanctioned by a government that preached partnership while practicing piracy. By 2019, when the full scope of BAIC's violations came to light, the case had become a textbook example of how China's state capitalism could weaponize joint ventures to strip foreign partners of their most valuable intellectual property. The relationship between BAIC and Daimler began in 2005 as what both sides portrayed as a mutually beneficial partnership. Beijing Automotive Industry Holding Company, BAIC's parent organization, had been struggling to develop competitive passenger vehicles despite being founded in 1958 and having decades to establish itself in the automotive sector. Daimler, meanwhile, was eager to tap into China's rapidly growing luxury car market, where Mercedes-Benz sales were projected to explode as the country's middle class expanded. The joint venture, Beijing Benz Automotive Company, was structured as a 50-50 partnership, with BAIC contributing manufacturing facilities, local market knowledge, and political connections, while Daimler provided technology, engineering expertise, and the prestigious Mercedes-Benz brand. Under Chinese law at the time, foreign automakers were required to partner with domestic companies and share technology as the price of market access, a requirement that forced Western companies into uncomfortable arrangements but seemed manageable given the profit potential. The partnership was celebrated by both governments as an example of successful Sino-German cooperation, with Chancellor Angela Merkel and Chinese Premier Li Keqiang attending joint venture ceremonies and praising the collaboration between German engineering excellence and Chinese manufacturing efficiency. The technology transfer agreements governing the partnership were supposed to create clear boundaries around what intellectual property Daimler would share and how BAIC could use that knowledge. These contracts, negotiated over months and running to thousands of pages, specified that BAIC would receive access to certain Mercedes-Benz technologies for the exclusive purpose of manufacturing vehicles within the joint venture framework. The agreements covered everything from engine designs and transmission systems to electronic control units and safety technologies, representing decades of German automotive innovation worth an estimated $15 billion in development costs. BAIC was explicitly prohibited from using this technology in vehicles produced outside the joint venture or sharing it with other Chinese automakers or government entities. The contracts included detailed provisions for protecting trade secrets, restricting reverse engineering, and maintaining the confidentiality of proprietary information, with penalty clauses that could theoretically void the entire partnership if violations were discovered. Daimler's lawyers had crafted these agreements to prevent exactly the kind of systematic theft that Chinese companies had perpetrated against other Western partners. But they underestimated both BAIC's sophistication and the Chinese government's willingness to support technology transfer violations when it served national industrial policy goals. The systematic theft began almost immediately after BAIC gained access to Mercedes-Benz production facilities and technical documentation. Chinese engineers working in the joint venture were instructed by BAIC management to photograph technical drawings, copy computer files, and document manufacturing processes that were explicitly covered by confidentiality agreements. These engineers, many of whom had been recruited specifically for their ability to absorb and replicate foreign technology, created detailed reports on everything from Mercedes-Benz engine designs to the company's quality control procedures, which were then transmitted to BAIC's independent research and development centers. The stolen technology was particularly focused on Mercedes-Benz's advanced gasoline engines, hybrid powertrains, and electronic vehicle systems. Exactly the technologies that Chinese automakers needed to compete in premium vehicle segments. BAIC established shadow engineering teams whose sole purpose was to reverse engineer Mercedes-Benz components and adapt them for use in BAIC's own vehicle lines, a process that typically took German engineers years, but could be accomplished in months when starting with stolen blueprints and specifications. The theft was so systematic that BAIC engineers created detailed databases cataloging Mercedes-Benz technologies, complete with technical specifications, supplier information, and manufacturing tolerances that would have taken decades for Chinese companies to develop independently. By 2014, the fruits of BAIC's technology theft were becoming visible in the marketplace through vehicles that bore suspicious similarities to Mercedes-Benz designs. BAIC's Sonova brand, launched as the company's premium offering, featured engines and transmissions that automotive analysts quickly recognized as barely disguised copies of Mercedes-Benz technology. The Sonova D80, BAIC's flagship sedan, incorporated a powertrain that was virtually identical to systems used in Mercedes-Benz C-Class vehicles, despite being developed supposedly independently by BAIC's engineering teams. Even more brazen was BAIC's BJ80 SUV, which copied not only Mercedes-Benz G-Wagon technology, but also its distinctive exterior styling, creating a vehicle that looked like a Mercedes-Benz product but sold at a fraction of the price. Industry experts who examined these vehicles found evidence of systematic copying that went far beyond the normal technology transfer expected in joint ventures, including proprietary software codes and manufacturing techniques that were clearly protected under the partnership agreements. BAIC was essentially using its joint venture access to create competing products that undermined Mercedes-Benz's market position in China, while violating every technology protection clause in their contracts. The theft was so comprehensive that some BAIC vehicles contained German-language diagnostic codes and error messages, direct evidence that the underlying software had been copied from Mercedes-Benz systems rather than developed independently. The scale of BAIC's violations extended beyond simple reverse engineering to include the wholesale theft of research and development data that Mercedes-Benz had accumulated over decades. Chinese investigators later discovered that BAIC had systematically accessed Daimler's global engineering databases through the joint venture's shared computer networks, downloading terabytes of proprietary information including future product plans, supplier contracts, and advanced research projects that had no connection to vehicles being produced in China. This stolen data gave BAIC unprecedented insight into Mercedes-Benz's strategic planning and technological roadmap, allowing the Chinese company to anticipate market developments and accelerate its own product development in ways that would have been impossible through legitimate means. BAIC's theft operation was so sophisticated that it included dedicated teams responsible for translating German technical documentation, reverse engineering proprietary manufacturing equipment, and even recruiting former Mercedes-Benz employees who could provide additional insights into the company's operations. The stolen technology was systematically integrated into BAIC's broader corporate structure, with different subsidiaries receiving specialized knowledge that allowed the entire company to benefit from Mercedes-Benz innovations across its vehicle lineup. Perhaps most damaging was BAIC's theft of next-generation electric vehicle technology that Mercedes-Benz was developing for future markets, giving the Chinese company a multi-year head start in developing competitive electric vehicles that could challenge German automakers in their home markets. The discovery of BAIC's systematic theft came to light in 2018 through a combination of corporate intelligence and legal investigation that revealed the full scope of the violations. Daimler's security team had grown suspicious when they noticed unusual patterns in database access logs from the joint venture facilities, including downloads of information unrelated to current production vehicles and access to files during non-business hours that suggested systematic data harvesting. A forensic investigation commissioned by Daimler revealed that BAIC had violated virtually every technology protection clause in their partnership agreements, with evidence of copying spanning from basic engine designs to advanced autonomous driving systems still under development in Germany. The investigation documented hundreds of specific instances where BAIC engineers had accessed, copied, and transmitted proprietary information to facilities outside the joint venture, creating a paper trail that demonstrated systematic rather than incidental violations. Internal emails recovered during the investigation revealed that BAIC's technology theft was coordinated at the highest levels of the company, with senior executives explicitly directing subordinates to acquire and copy Mercedes-Benz technology for use in independent BAIC projects. The smoking gun came in the form of internal BAIC presentations that detailed how stolen Mercedes-Benz technology would be integrated into future vehicle platforms, complete with timelines for implementation and cost savings projections based on avoiding independent research and development expenses. The legal and financial consequences of BAIC's technology theft violations created a crisis that threatened to destroy one of the automotive industry's most important partnerships. When Daimler confronted BAIC with evidence of the systematic violations in early 2019, the Chinese company initially denied wrongdoing before eventually acknowledging what it characterized as isolated incidents by rogue employees acting without authorization. This defense collapsed when investigators produced evidence that the theft had been orchestrated by senior BAIC management and approved by executives who reported directly to the company's board of directors. Daimler demanded immediate cessation of all technology transfer violations, return of stolen intellectual property, and financial compensation estimated at over $8 billion to account for research and development costs and lost competitive advantage. BAIC's response was to threaten withdrawal from the joint venture entirely, a move that would have cost Daimler its access to the Chinese market, but also eliminated Mercedes-Benz's fastest-growing profit center. The dispute escalated when Daimler discovered that BAIC was sharing stolen Mercedes-Benz technology with other Chinese automakers and state-owned enterprises, effectively spreading German automotive innovations throughout China's automotive industry in direct violation of technology transfer agreements. The Chinese government's response was to characterize Daimler's complaints as trade protectionism and suggest that technology sharing was a natural result of joint venture partnerships, despite clear contractual language prohibiting the specific violations that BAIC had committed. The resolution of the BAIC technology theft case came through a settlement that demonstrated how difficult it is for Western companies to enforce intellectual property rights against state-owned Chinese enterprises. After months of negotiations mediated by both German and Chinese government officials, Daimler agreed to a compromise that allowed the joint venture to continue while imposing new restrictions on technology access and requiring BAIC to pay an undisclosed settlement amount estimated by industry analysts at approximately $2 billion. The settlement required BAIC to cease all unauthorized use of Mercedes-Benz technology in independent vehicle projects and implement enhanced security measures to prevent future violations, but stopped short of requiring the Chinese company to abandon vehicle platforms that had already incorporated stolen technology. Perhaps more significantly, the agreement included provisions for increased Daimler oversight of joint venture operations and restrictions on BAIC employee access to sensitive technical information, essentially treating the Chinese partner as a security risk rather than a trusted ally. The settlement was widely criticized by intellectual property experts as inadequate given the scope of BAIC's violations, but Daimler's willingness to accept limited remedies reflected the company's dependence on Chinese market access and the practical difficulty of enforcing Western legal concepts in China's state-controlled economy. The case established a troubling precedent that suggested Chinese state-owned enterprises could systematically steal foreign technology with limited consequences, provided they were willing to pay modest financial settlements and implement cosmetic security improvements. The BAIC Mercedes-Benz technology transfer violations case became a watershed moment that fundamentally changed how Western automakers approach partnerships with Chinese companies and highlighted the systematic nature of China's technology acquisition strategy. The case demonstrated that China's requirements for technology transfer in joint ventures were not simply about accessing foreign innovations for legitimate business purposes, but were part of a broader national strategy to acquire advanced technologies that could be used to compete against the very companies that had provided them. For Daimler and other German automakers, the BAIC violation served as a costly lesson in the risks of sharing advanced technology with state-owned Chinese partners who faced explicit government pressure to acquire and disseminate foreign innovations regardless of contractual obligations. The case also revealed the limitations of international legal frameworks for protecting intellectual property against state-sponsored theft, as traditional contract enforcement mechanisms proved inadequate when dealing with companies that enjoyed government support and operated in jurisdictions where foreign legal rights carried limited weight. The automotive industry's response was to fundamentally restructure technology transfer arrangements with Chinese partners, implementing compartmentalized access systems, enhanced security protocols, and contractual provisions that attempted to limit Chinese companies' ability to use shared technology beyond narrowly defined joint venture activities. However, the BAIC case also demonstrated that even the most sophisticated legal protections were vulnerable to systematic theft when Chinese companies were willing to risk partnership relationships in order to acquire strategic technologies, suggesting that Western companies faced an impossible choice between market access and intellectual property protection in their dealings with Chinese state-owned enterprises.